Unless it floats, you might be a little floating bobber you could use, but they tell you to fly line, that means no sinker. And that's the way the fish are being caught. And the crews will tell you that, but pay attention to the crew. And that's how they make their money. If you catch fish, they make money. They don't want you using a sinker that goes down the bottom so you catch a sand bass if you're lucky. If the fish are on top, fish on top. And believe the crew, they'll tell you. Tell you what kind of size hook to use, what kind of lures to use. Anything you need, they'll tell you. That's how they make their money.
So you guys are in the water research business nowadays. So what do you see are we doomed like everybody says, or are we going to be okay? Are we going to make it? Or are we going to live through this, or what do you think? Is it the end of the world?
So I just finished the five-year survey for Long Beach and LA, San Diego, and all that kind of stuff. We're doing a 5-minute trawl. 5-minute trawl in LA Harbor, and it's not uncommon to catch 2,000 fish.
Inside the harbor.
Inside the harbor, yeah.
That's pretty unbelievable,
that's not
guys.
Or sardines either.
Yeah, it's white croaker, spot fin croaker,
Anything.
it's
Everything.
very, very, very healthy. But inside the harbors, outside the harbors, tons of fish. You know, and this is fish that, you know, sport fishing people don't see. And so, I mean, their bait, you know, the queenfish, the white croaker, all these other things, that's all for bigger fish. Catch lots of big halibut in there. It's, I don't think it's doomed at all. I mean, I think it's good.
When we started doing that kind of work, I go, there's no fish in the harbor, especially way back. We caught so many fish one time, it was embarrassing. One time with a lampara net, we had a barracuda in every hole. And the trouble with barracudas, they're delicate, so they all died. So we had to throw them back, and there's 500 barracuda floating on the surface. There's the environmental boat saving them all, and we're killing all these barracuda, and what do we do, you know? Should have been able to sell them, really, but we couldn't, so we didn't.
No, it looks really healthy, you know, especially the harbors. You'd think the harbors are, you know, would be more polluted with the boats in it and everything, but they're very, very healthy.
Plus, they're cleaning all the bad areas up constantly. Fish Harbor is a real dirty area because of all the canneries and things that were there for years. That's a spot now they're going to focus on to get it cleaned up. The consolidated slips, right, is another area that's dirty because the Montrose Chemical Company dumps shit in there and it runs right in there. And they're going to clean that up, and that'll be, you know, it'll take 20 years to get it clean, but that'll end up being a pristine area. And clear water doesn't necessarily mean pristine. I mean, the sediments can still be dirty, but, and they do a lot. Most of our work is collecting sediments, and they sample for the sediment to see if they can dump it offshore or they have to take it to a landfill as they clean it up.
When they do dredging. So
when they do dredging projects.
That's about 80% of our work. Then we fish for science for the rest of the time. But yeah, no, it looks good. As far as I can see, it looks really good.
Well, these are the guys that are touching the water, so these are the people you want to hear from.
And you know, and then sometimes sometimes the fish aren't there. Then there's different reasons for it too. I mean, I remember when we did a gillnet survey inside of LA Harbor, and the years that we did before, we kill a fish. I mean, there's just catch all kinds of them. It's only a 100-foot net, but you catch lots of fish. And this one year we're up there and we didn't catch any, very, very few, hardly any, and all we'd get is heads, you know, that were in the gill net. So we're trying to figure this whole thing out, and the other people used to put lights out so they'd get bait and stuff, you know, inside the harbor. The queenfish would come up just thick, and nothing under the lights, and just going, wow, this is really strange. So the few fish that we did get, we had the gill and gut freeze and all this kind of stuff for this survey. And we looked down there in the middle of the day, and Kenny's sitting back here on the back of the boat doing this gill and gut stuff, and we look down and there's 20 Humboldt squid sitting there like dogs looking up at us like this. And every time a piece of scrap went over there, they'd grab this thing. So they were just in the harbor eating everything that swam. So you can't say that the fish are gone sometimes for what particular reason. Maybe it's a whole bunch of squid in there scaring them and eating them, or something else, or they move on, or.
But every day is a different day fishing. You got to figure it out. If you pay to go on a sport boat, let the deckhand and the skipper figure it out for you, and they will, because if you don't catch any fish, they don't make any money. Only way they make money is to sell you a few hamburgers or beers. But if you get a whole sack of fish, you're going to have them clean them. They're going to make some good side money. You might give them a tip, and believe me, they want you to catch fish more than you do.
More than you do,
But
absolutely.
I think, you know, in the last 10 years, you know, with all this offshore stuff and everything, we never saw that before. We never fished offshore particularly, but it's amazing. You know?
But this bluefin thing has got to blow both of your minds. You guys, I mean, Kenny, you were just talking about your swordfish days out there driving all over the ocean. If that stuff was there, you'd have run into it.
We run into it.
There was no way you could have avoided it. Plus, you're in the tower looking with binoculars.
We did catch bluefin on the beach in those days, now and then. One or two, maybe.
I caught the last bluefin on the Seahorse at Salt Creek.
So,
Wow, at Salt Creek in the kelp?
In the kelp,
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I deadheaded with whoever was running the boat, and just I had a blue and white jig on, and there was some bonita around, and these things come crashing up, and I threw that thing on there and caught it was like a 10 or 12 pounder.
But it was a bluefin on the anchor at Salt Creek.
I think that's the last one we caught on that I've heard of on right.
But it was very common back when Bud and Bogey were there. They caught a lot of bluefin. It was really common, and yellowtail and everything. There was more fish inside, and the water's dirtier inside, no doubt. There's lots of stuff, you know, a lot of things making the water turbid. Conditions. I know. Dave just did a talk on conditions. You got to learn about conditions because fish bite when the conditions are right. And if you don't know, maybe you can sign up for Dave's program and learn about the conditions, because there's a million things that can make the fish bite.
You know about you and I, when the water gets clear at our secret spot, we kill them.
Yeah, and that's about 5 minutes from where we're sitting right now. And that thing's been fished a million times by a million different people. But I'll tell you what, when everything's perfect, it's never been any better on the planet than right 5 minutes from the dock here.
And they bite everything.
And you drop a hot dog in the water, they're gonna eat it. And
they're all nice fish. You think they're all the bigger fish have been fished out.
Yeah. And they get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Big spawning calico bass. It's pretty amazing that this fish is right here. And back to the bluefin thing, which is super important to understand. They told us 5-6 years ago that they were extinct, that there were no bluefin left on the planet. It was the most endangered fish in the ocean. Now, guys, we're talking right now, it's April 8th or 9th right now, and the guys are catching bluefin right now as good as it's ever been down below. And the last 4 years we've had some of the most spectacular giant bluefin fish, and no one's even messing with the little ones. They're going after these 200 and 300 pounders within striking distance of Dana Point Harbor. That's pretty insane to think. Everyone just needs to relax and take a deep breath.
We didn't fish offshore at all, really. Albacore maybe.
Yeah, albacore.
We'd fish albacore a little bit, but offshore the albacore would be within the distance of the pier. We'd go out for a 4-hour crew trip after work and get albacore. And
That's the best albacore trip I ever had with your dad. I was a deckhand on the Some Fun, and we fished bass on the beach in the morning, on morning half day, and we heard that there was some albacore outside. We had 25 passengers. We got our first stop, and I could see the end of San Clemente Pier. We had 197 fish on the afternoon half-day boat. And the thing that sticks out in my mind the very most is the guy with a rent rod made his first cast. He had a backlash, and he sat on the box and picked that thing the whole trip. I didn't have time to help him.
Oh no! And he didn't catch a single albacore.
And then that one season, I don't remember which year it was, but when Bag and I got the first big eyes.
Those big eyes, yeah.
And it was we're parked out there, and we had a shark trip, and we had gone out the day before and caught a whole tank of mackerel, and we're sitting there, and Bag sees a boil, and he casts out on my rod with 40 pound, and it just nailed him and took all the line. So I had an old 4-aught with a shitty drag. I grabbed that, hooked it on, boom, caught one, 88 pounds, I think. We caught 4 that day and hooked 104. They were biting on everything.
They were on the corner.
Yeah, right in the corner. Just drop it down and you had one. But we didn't have the tackle like they have now. And the reel I had, the drags were shot, so my thumbs were bleeding.
You weren't ready for it.
You were shark fishing.
We were shark fishing, you know. But, which we never did. We caught tuna all day, or fish tuna.
Oh, hey, I know a good story. This is a great story, guys. You won't even believe this. Kenny Nielsen was part of the most unbelievable catch ever on the planet Earth. This catch, goes against anything any of you ever heard of. This thing, Kenny, tell the story about, you guys won't even believe what Kenny was part of. They caught on the Some Fun.
I guess you're talking about the penguin.
Yes,
Yeah.
the penguin.
We were fishing near the pier. I think we were fishing at Clementi Reef, Bag and I, and 10 passengers maybe. And we see this funky thing swimming around, and we didn't know what it was. Really hauling ass. It was real fast and everything else. Next thing you know, somebody hooks this thing. We bring it up to the boat and look at this thing, and we got a net and brought it in the boat. And it was probably 40 pounds, and it was a penguin. And what the hell do we do?
I mean, come on, a penguin?
A penguin.
Come on.
And so we got this thing and we put it in the bait tank and drained the water out of the bait tank and had it swallowing around in 6 inches of water and a tank full of anchovies, which he was eating as fast as he could eat them. We called SeaWorld and said, we got a penguin, and they didn't believe us. Oh, it's a cormorant. I said, we know what a cormorant is. It's a penguin. It's got a tuxedo on and walks like Charlie Chaplin. It's a penguin. And they never believed us. So when we got back to the dock that night, we unloaded the passengers and everything else, and people had heard about the penguin and they all wanted to see it. So Bag and I started charging a beer to look at the penguin. So people had to go buy.
They had to buy a beer.
They had to go buy a beer in Turks and bring it down to us. So we're drinking beer, and SeaWorld's going to show up. Well, they didn't show up till 11 o'clock.
At night?
At night.
Oh, boy.
We were pretty ripe by the time SeaWorld showed up, and the guy looks in there and he goes, oh my God, it is a penguin. I go, no shit, man. And so they took it to SeaWorld, and it ended up in the new display they had there. And we got a golden pass for a whole year to go, and we went down there and got to go inside it and walk on the ice and all this stuff.
This was in the early 80s.
Early 80s, yeah, when they first built that display. And
yeah, I mean, that must have been like 1980, because you stopped working at 83.
Yeah, right.
83 at the wharf.
And but it was a good story, and it's in the Data Point history book with a picture of Petey the penguin. But it was fun with everybody coming to see it, because nobody believed it, and we had the evidence. It was real.
And what did they tell you when SeaWorld got the penguin? Where did this penguin come from? What do you mean he caught a penguin on a half-day boat in Dana Point? Come on.
Some tuna boat possibly brought it up from the equator, because it was also tame. The guy said they're real nasty when they're in the wild, and this thing would eat right out of your hand. And this thing had probably been on a tuna boat as a pet, and when they got to San Diego, they let it go because it's illegal to have them. And it swam up here, and we caught it. So.
Pretty unbelievable.
Yeah,
So you just don't know what's going to happen when you go out fishing, guys. That's how we're going to end this little series, man, with the penguin story. I want to thank Bob and Ken for being a part of this. And guys, if you have any questions or anything, feel free to put them on the comments page on the bottom of this thing, and Bobby and Kenny would be more than happy to answer any questions you got. We got direct contact with these guys all the time. As a matter of fact, Bobby's my little sister's godfather. Kenny's been my hero since I was a little kid. Both of these guys are the reason why I do what I do, because these guys raised me pretty much. My dad and these two guys were my life when I was a little kid. So thanks for logging in. Thanks for being a part of it. Wait, whoa.
One more thing. Don't forget to change your bait. That's the most important thing. Always change your bait.
You mean you can't leave it out there all day?
Don't soak a dead bait. Don't put on a dead bait. If you get a bite or your bait looks like crap, change it. Just go over to the tank and spend 10 minutes looking for the right bait. If you do, you'll catch a fish. I used to have a pole that I called the magic pole, and I had magic pole written on it, and I'd let the kids use the magic pole. And now the regulars would come out with their kids, and they want to, can we use the magic pole? Can we use the magic pole? Well, it didn't have a sinker, and it had the right size hook, and I'd hook the bait on for it, cast it out, hand it to them, and boom, they're hooked up. And change your bait. That's the most important thing.
It's like I say in all my seminars, the biggest thing you need to have is the largest bait tank you can fit on your boat. That's the key. All right, guys, thank you.
Thank you.